No one remembered who fired the first shot. Some said it was an accident. Others whispered it was revenge. But everyone agreed on one thing. When humans entered the war, the galaxy changed forever. For centuries, the stars belonged to the old races, proud empires that ruled through fear and power. The Zoreth Empire was one of them, tall, silver-skinned warriors who believed they were born to command. To them, humans were nothing more than background. Noise, soft, emotional, primitive. That illusion died the day a Zoreth captain destroyed a small human transport ship, just to teach respect. What he didn't know was that one of the dead was the daughter of a human Marine. That Marine's name was Aaron Blake, the human. Governments begged for calm, but soldiers like Blake didn't wait for orders. He and thousands of others took their old ships, turned mining lasers into weapons, and went to war. They didn't fight for glory or territory. They fought because someone killed their own. The Zoreth laughed at first. They sent fleets of shining warships expecting easy victory. But humans, they fought like demons wearing broken armor. They learned fast. They made every defeat a lesson, every loss a reason to hit back harder. And soon, the galaxy saw something it had never seen before. The Zoreth were afraid. Battle after battle, humans pushed further. They didn't have stronger weapons. They had stronger hearts. They fought with broken ships, no sleep and no backup, yet they refused to die quietly. They used asteroids as shields, turned old freighters into traps, and even learned to hack alien war codes. The Zoreth started calling them the Endless, because no matter how many humans they killed, more always came, more always fought, more always won. 5 years passed. Entire planets burned. Both sides were drowning in blood and dust. And then, something strange happened. The humans stopped attacking. The Zoreth stopped chasing. The Galactic Council forced both sides to sign a peace treaty, a thin, trembling promise that everyone knew wouldn't last. Queen Jara of the Zoreth signed it herself. Tall silver eyes glowing with cold hate, she stared at the human generals across the table. "Peace," she said. "But remember, the Zoreth never forget." Captain Aaron Blake was there that day, silent behind his helmet. He didn't answer. He just looked at the stars, wondering how many more graves they would need before peace was real. Weeks later, the galaxy tried to breathe again. Trade routes reopened. Children laughed under damaged domes, and for a moment, it seemed the fire was dying, until one morning, a scream echoed through the Zoreth palace. The queen's daughters, 3 young princesses, had vanished. No guards, no traces, no signals. The galaxy froze. Queen Jara's rage shook the stars. She accused the humans instantly. "Find them," she commanded, "or I will burn their homeworld to ashes." Fleets began to move again. Weapons powered up. Peace shattered like thin glass, but far from the throne rooms and warships. Deep inside the wreckage of an abandoned spaceport, something very different was happening. A small human outpost had detected strange movement in the ruins, a faint energy signature, weak but steady. A rescue team went to check. When they arrived, they found a broken shuttle, half buried in dust. Inside, silence. Then a soft sound. Breathing. 3 small shapes curled together on the floor. Alien, royal, and terrified, and beside them, a human soldier, his armor scorched, his gun resting beside his hand, blood on his shoulder, and the 3 alien princesses, asleep, safely resting on his chest. His name tag still read, Captain Aaron Blake. When the rescue team called it in, no one believed them. How could the daughters of the most feared alien queen in the galaxy be sleeping peacefully on the chest of the man who once led attacks against their empire? But the camera feed didn't lie. The image spread across every channel in the galaxy. 3 silver-skinned princesses, safe in the arms of a blood-stained human. The universe went silent. Some called it a trick. Others called it a miracle. But those who had fought in the war knew what it truly meant. Humanity had done the impossible again. No one knew what would happen next. Would the queen destroy Earth in rage? Would the soldier be hailed as a hero or hunted as a traitor? Would this fragile bond between enemies spark peace? or start the deadliest war in galactic history? Whatever the answer, one thing was clear. The galaxy had made a terrible mistake. They messed with humans, and they were about to find out why. Captain Aaron Blake opened his eyes to silence. His visor was cracked, his armor covered in dust, and his pulse barely steady. For a moment, he thought the war was still raging. But then he felt something warm and small resting on his chest. He looked down. 3 tiny alien girls, silver-skinned glowing veins across their temples, were sleeping peacefully, their heads rising and falling with his breath. Their hands were curled around the edges of his armor as if they trusted him completely. He blinked, confused. Zoreth princesses, royal blood, the enemy. How had they ended up here with him? Blake's helmet AI crackled weakly. Life signs detected. Human 1. Alien 3. All stable. He scanned the broken shuttle around them. The walls were torn open. Smoke floated in thin waves. There were signs of impact. An explosion. Maybe an ambush. It looked like the shuttle had crashed during evacuation. He remembered pieces. A blast, screams, fire, then the sound of small voices crying in the smoke. And without thinking, he had run toward it. He tried to move now, but the smallest princess stirred, gripping his chest plate tighter. Her voice, soft and trembling, broke the silence. "Don't go." "Please!" Blake froze. Her accent was strange but clear. He spoke slowly, careful not to scare her. "You're safe now. I won't hurt you." The girl looked up at him, eyes like liquid mercury, full of fear and something else. Trust. Humans had burned her worlds once. Yet somehow, lying against this blood-stained armor, she felt safe. The galaxy would call it impossible. But the heart doesn't follow politics. Outside the ruins, the night was cold and silent. Blake checked his communicator and nothing. No signal. His squad was gone. His ship destroyed. They were trapped. He looked at the 3 girls again. He could leave them. He could walk away and save himself. But something deep inside refused. He remembered his daughter, lost years ago in the first Zoreth attack. These children were someone's daughters too, he whispered. Not again. Then he lifted the smallest one into his arms and stood up. Captain Blake had been many things. A soldier, a killer, a survivor. But from that moment he became something else. A protector. Hours turned into days. He built a shelter in the wreckage, using burned metal sheets and power cells from his armor to keep the cold away. He rationed his food, gave most to the girls, and taught them how to speak bits of English. They told him their names, Lyra, Nera, and Sira, daughters of Queen Jara herself. Lyra, the eldest, was smart and quiet. Nera was curious, always asking questions. Sira, the youngest, loved to hold his hand and listen to human stories, and Blake, he listened too. About their home, about how their shuttle was attacked by raiders when returning from a peace mission. No human had done it. It was someone else. Maybe even a faction that wanted the war to start again. Every night, Blake sat by the flickering blue flame of a plasma cell. The girls slept close, their soft breathing echoing in the ruins. He stared at the stars and wondered if anyone was looking for them. He didn't know that across the galaxy, everyone was. Human news feeds showed the photo, the 3 alien princesses resting on the chest of a human warrior. The image broke the net. Half the galaxy called him a kidnapper. The other half called him a hero. The queen swore revenge. "Bring me my daughters," she roared, "and bring me the head of the human who holds them." But the human fleets refused to hand him over. Even the generals who hated him said the same words. He saved children. He's one of us. Back in the ruins, Blake finally got a weak signal through his wrist comm. "Command, this is Captain Blake. I have survivors. Repeat, 3 alien miners. Need extraction, static." Then a voice. "Blake, you're alive, stay put. We're coming." But deep down, he wasn't sure if rescue would really mean safety. Not for the girls. If the Zoreth found them first, they'd twist the truth. Use it as an excuse to start war again. He couldn't let that happen. He had to protect them, even if it meant standing against both armies. That night, as he prepared to move them through the wasteland, Lyra looked at him with steady eyes. "You're not like the others," she said softly. Blake smiled, tired but warm. "Neither are you, and somewhere beyond the stars, Two species that once hated each other were unknowingly taking their first step toward peace. Not through politics or treaties, but through a broken soldier and 3 frightened children. But peace was fragile. The Zorith fleet was already on its way. Scouts had picked up human transmissions from the ruins. And in the darkness, a shadowed ship, not Zorith, not human, was listening too. Someone wanted this new bond destroyed before it even began. As the horizon lit up with the fire of descending ships, Blake gripped his rifle, turned toward the girls, and said quietly, "Stay behind me. Whatever happens, I'll get you home." The engines roared above like thunder. Dust rose, lights flashed, and the man once known as a war machine now stood as the only wall between innocence and extinction. The night sky burned. Captain Aaron Blake watched the horizon flash as alien ships broke through the clouds like falling stars. The Zorith had found him. Their engines screamed across the wasteland, blue fire lighting up the ruins. Dust swirled around him as the ground shook under their landing thrusters. He knew what that meant. The Queen's army was here. Beside him, the 3 princesses crouched behind broken metal walls, their eyes wide with fear. Lyra clutched the youngest, Syra, close. "Are they here to save us?" she whispered. Blake didn't answer. His jaw tightened. He knew the truth. This wasn't a rescue. It was a hunt. Across the galaxy, a message echoed through every communication channel. The human named Aaron Blake is holding the royal heirs of the Zorith Empire. Capture him alive if possible. Kill if necessary. Even the Galactic Council issued a warning. Do not assist the human fugitive. But humans rarely obeyed warnings when one of their own was in danger. As the alien troops landed, Blake activated his old combat implant. His HUD flickered to life, scanning for heat signatures. Dozens of red dots appeared, closing fast. He checked his rifle. 2 magazines. Not enough. He whispered to the girls, "Stay low. Don't make a sound." Then he moved, silent, precise, deadly. He took out the first scout before the alien even saw him coming. A quick strike. No sound, only shadows. He dragged the body behind a fallen beam and took its weapon. Old instincts returned like fire in his blood. Inside the command ship above, Commander Rethan, one of Queen Jara's most loyal officers, watched the scanner feed. "Found you," he murmured. He turned to his crew. "Deploy hunter drones. Bring me the human's head. The Queen wants it displayed on her throne." But not everyone in that room agreed. A younger officer hesitated. "Sir," the human saved the princesses. "Should we not confirm their safety first?" Rethan's eyes flashed cold. "Mercy is weakness. The Queen wants revenge, not reasons." Back in the ruins, Blake guided the girls through the darkness. They moved from shadow to shadow, stepping over burned metal and shattered glass. Every noise in the distance felt like thunder. Syra stumbled once, crying softly. Blake lifted her into his arms without a word and kept moving. He could hear the drones now, a faint buzzing that grew louder with every second. "Keep your heads down," he said quietly. He reached a broken tunnel, an old maintenance shaft that led deep underground. As they crawled inside, light beams swept over the entrance behind them. The alien soldiers were closing in. Deep below the surface, the air was damp and heavy. The tunnel stretched for miles, an old mining network from before the war. Blake's flashlight flickered as he checked his map. They were close to the old transport line. If he could reach it, he might be able to escape toward the human border. Lyra looked up at him. "Why are you helping us? We're the enemy." Blake stopped, turned, and met her gaze through the dim light. "Because you're children," he said softly. "And because I've seen what happens when no one helps." She didn't reply, but her eyes filled with something new. Respect. For the first time, she didn't see a soldier. She saw humanity. Meanwhile, above ground, human outposts were picking up signals of the chase. On a military station orbiting the neutral moon, a communications officer frowned at the data. "Captain Blake's ID just pinged. He's alive, and he's being hunted by Zorith troops." The station commander, Admiral Ruiz, leaned forward. "Official orders say not to interfere." The officer hesitated. "And unofficially?" Ruiz smiled slightly. "Unofficially, he's human." "Get him out," he gave the command quietly. "Send in the Ghost Squadron." No markings, no trail. Bring him home. Down below, Blake's group finally reached the end of the tunnel, a massive chamber filled with abandoned cargo pods. He exhaled in relief, then froze. A light blinked red on the far wall. A tracker. They'd been marked. He turned too late. The first drone burst through the ceiling, its blue plasma eyes glowing like fire. "Down!" he shouted. The beam missed him by inches. He fired back, the recoil shaking his arm. Sparks flew as metal tore apart. He hit one drone, then another, but there were too many. He grabbed the girls and dove behind a steel container as explosions echoed around them. Just when it seemed over, a new sound filled the air, sharp, powerful, human engines. Blake looked up through the hole in the ceiling. 3 black ships, unmarked, fast and deadly, cut through the night. Missiles screamed down, wiping out the alien squad in a storm of fire. His communicator buzzed. A voice came through, clear and familiar. "Ghost 1 to Blake. Heard you made some friends." "Time to come home," he smiled faintly. "About damn time." Within minutes, he and the girls were pulled aboard one of the ghost ships. As they lifted off, Blake looked down at the burning ruins below. Another world destroyed because of fear and power. Sierra tugged at his sleeve. "Are we safe now?" Blake stared out the window, watching the flames fade into darkness. "For now," he said, "but the real war hasn't even started." Because far away, in the throne room of the Zoreth Palace, Queen Jara watched the live feed of the rescue. Her daughters, smiling beside a human, her jaw tightened, eyes burning with rage and disbelief. "Send a message to every fleet," she whispered. "Peace is over." And somewhere deep inside, she didn't realize it yet, but her daughters were about to change everything she believed about humans. In the grand hall of the Zoreth Palace, silence ruled. Queen Jara stood before a massive hologram, frozen on one image that now haunted her every waking moment. Her 3 daughters. Smiling beside a human, around her generals, ministers and courtiers waited like statues, too afraid to speak. The queen's silver eyes burned with rage. Her voice, when it finally came, was calm, too calm. "That creature had touched my children." Her words dripped like acid. "Find him."
"Bring me Aaron Blake, alive or dead, I don't care which." The court bowed low.
"By your command, my queen." But deep inside her chest, under the fury, something colder stirred. Fear. She had seen the video too many times. The girls weren't terrified. They were happy, laughing, safe, in the arms of the man who was supposed to be their enemy. Across the galaxy, that same image was everywhere. On news screens, on ship consoles. In every bar, every broadcast, every station, some called it propaganda. Some called it hope. And for the first time, the galaxy began to whisper, maybe humans aren't monsters after all. But Jara didn't care about whispers. Her pride had been wounded before the entire galaxy, and the Zoreth never forgave humiliation. Meanwhile, inside the stealth human vessel Spectre 1, Captain Aaron Blake sat in the medbay as a nurse patched his wounds. The 3 princesses sat close by, whispering quietly in their alien tongue. Sierra reached out and held Blake's hand. "You saved us," she said softly. Blake smiled tiredly. "Guess that makes us even." Lyra, the eldest, frowned. "My mother will come for us." "I know," Blake replied. "That's why we need to get you home before she burns half the galaxy looking." The girls exchanged worried looks. They knew what their mother could do. When the queen was angry, worlds turned to ash. Back on the Zoreth flagship, Commander Rathan kneeled before Queen Jara. He was bloodied, ashamed. "My queen." The human escaped. "Our forces," Jara cut him off with a glare. "Do you know what I see, Commander?" she hissed. "I see my blood, my heirs, resting their heads on the chest of the same species that slaughtered our soldiers." Rathan bowed lower. "I will find him, Majesty. Even if I must burn every human planet." Jara turned away. "Do it. No mercy." But not everyone in her empire agreed. In the royal chambers, Jara's advisor, Elder Vethra, a wise, ancient scholar, dared to speak what others would not. "My queen, the humans saved your daughters when others would have left them to die. Should we not—" "Enough!" Jara's voice shook the chamber. "You think I should thank him? You think I should trust a human? Her hands trembled. They killed my husband. They killed our people. You think one man changes that? Vethra bowed deeply, but her old eyes were sad. Perhaps not, my queen, but maybe your daughters already have. Jara said nothing. Her fury burned, but doubt flickered, like a crack in iron. Meanwhile, on Spectre 1, the human admiral, Ruiz, gathered his crew. Blake is a wanted man, he said. Zoreth fleets are moving fast. The council has declared him a war criminal. Blake stood quietly. I didn't start this war, he said. And I'm not letting it start again. Ruiz sighed. You understand what you're doing? You're protecting the daughters of the most dangerous woman in the galaxy. Blake nodded. Then she can come talk to me herself, the admiral smirked. That's the problem, Captain. She's not coming to talk. She's coming to kill. The next few days passed in a blur of fear and planning. The human crew treated the princesses with kindness, giving them food, blankets, even teaching them old Earth games. Nira learned how to play chess. Sira loved to draw stars on the glass panels. Lyra spent hours in the command deck, asking questions about human history, about wars, about peace. She couldn't understand it. How a race known for its violence also built art, music and poetry that could make the universe cry. One night, she asked Blake, why do your people fight so much? And still talk about peace? He looked at her for a long time before answering. Because peace means nothing if you haven't bled for it. She didn't reply. But in that moment, something inside her shifted. Far away, on her flagship, Queen Jara received a secret transmission from her own daughters. The signal was faint, but the message clear. Mother, please stop the war. The human saved us. He is not our enemy. The Queen's hands trembled as she replayed it again and again. Her daughters' voices. Their laughter. And that human's voice in the background, calm and gentle. She slammed her hand on the console, shattering the screen. Her fury roared back like fire. If the humans think they can steal my children's loyalty, they will learn the meaning of extinction. That night, fleets began to move. Zoreth warships broke orbit in every sector. Engines burned blue in the void, and in the silence of space, humanity's radar lit up with red warnings. The Queen was coming. Not for peace, not for negotiation, but for vengeance. Inside the ship, Blake stood at the viewport, staring at the stars as alarms began to flash red. Lyra came to his side, her small voice breaking the quiet. She's coming. My mother. Blake didn't move. I know. Will you fight her? He turned slowly, eyes tired but steady. I'll protect you. Whatever it takes. She looked at him. This scarred human soldier who had risked everything for them. And for the first time, she realized something terrifying. If her mother killed him, the galaxy would never forgive the Zoreth, because humans forget many things, but they never forget who protected their own. The stars were no longer silent. They burned. From one end of the galaxy to the other, ships ignited their engines. A storm of light and metal filled the void. Zoreth war fleets moving like a swarm of fire. Their mission, erase humanity. In the war room aboard her flagship, Queen Jara stood like a statue of fury. Her silver armor reflected the glow of holographic battle maps. Every human world, she ordered. Every outpost. Every ship that carries their flag, destroy it. Her generals bowed in silence. But her eyes betrayed something she would never admit. Fear. Not fear of losing a war. Fear of losing her daughters again, across the border. Alarms screamed inside human space. Command centers lit up with red lights. Admirals shouted orders, soldiers rushed to stations, and the galaxy's most underestimated species prepared for the impossible, again. On the Spectre 1, Captain Aaron Blake watched from the observation deck. The stars ahead were filled with movement, warships forming battle lines like ancient armies of light. Ruiz's voice came through the comms. They're coming in hot, Captain. Hundreds of ships. Blake tightened his jaw. Then we'll remind them who we are. He looked over his shoulder. The 3 alien princesses were there, small, fragile, staring through the glass at the gathering storm. Lyra whispered, "She's here." "My mother." Blake nodded slowly. "I know." Moments later, the first shot was fired. A massive plasma beam tore through the darkness, hitting a human defense station. The explosion bloomed like a second sun. The war had begun again, but something was different this time. The humans didn't run. They didn't hide. They stood their ground. Fleets of old Earth-class cruisers, patched and scarred from the last war, rose from their hangars. Pilots locked helmets, whispered small prayers, and launched into the fire. For home. For the fallen. For humanity. Their voices echoed across every channel. Inside the flagship Valiant Dawn, Admiral Ruiz addressed his crew. They think we're weak. They think we'll beg for mercy. They've forgotten what we are, he pointed at the stars. Remind them. And so the humans fought, with broken ships and endless courage. Every vessel became a weapon, every loss a lesson, every scream a reason to keep going. Because humans never fight for power. They fight for each other. Queen Jara watched the human defense with disbelief. Her ships should have crushed them easily, but the humans fought with fire that no strategy could measure. Impossible, she hissed. They're outnumbered 10-1. Her advisor, Elder Vethra, spoke softly. Majesty, they fight as if the stars themselves are watching. Jara slammed her hand on the console. I don't care what they fight for. Burn them all! But even as she said it, her mind betrayed her, flashing with the image of her daughters' faces, safe in that human's arms. In the middle of the chaos, Blake's ship dodged through the battlefield. He wasn't fighting to win. He was fighting to reach the Queen. He knew this war would destroy everything if he didn't stop it now. Ruiz's voice crackled through the radio. Blake, where the hell are you going? To end this, Blake answered. Alone?
That's suicide!
He smiled faintly. Yeah, sounds human, doesn't it? He disengaged the transponder, diving straight into enemy space. On board the Queen's flagship, alarms blared. Unidentified ship approaching fast. Single pilot! It's human! Shall we fire, my queen? Jara hesitated. Her daughter's signal was coming from that same ship. Hold fire, she said softly. Let him come. The bridge crew exchanged looks, shocked. No one had ever heard those words from her before. Blake's ship docked with the flagship. The landing bay was silent, soldiers surrounding him with weapons drawn. He stepped out slowly, unarmed, the three princesses beside him. Gasps filled the air. Every alien soldier lowered their weapons slightly, uncertain what to do. Queen Jara appeared, tall, radiant, furious. Her gaze locked onto Blake like a blade, so... This is the human who stole my daughters, she said coldly. Blake met her eyes, calm and unflinching. No, I'm the one who saved them. Lyra stepped forward. Mother, please, he protected us. He fought for us. Jara's voice trembled. They are my children. He is our enemy, Nira shouted, tears in her eyes. Then your enemy saved your blood, Mother. The room went still. For the first time, the Queen faltered. Blake took a step forward. I don't expect you to forgive us. I don't expect you to trust us. But if you start this war again, billions will die. Not just humans. Yours too. Jara glared at him, but her breath caught. His armor was scarred, his face pale, his hands shaking. Not from fear, but exhaustion. This wasn't a soldier begging for mercy. This was a man who had already given everything. Silence filled the chamber. Then a voice crackled over the intercom, human and alien commanders shouting. Fleets on both sides preparing to fire their final weapons. One spark, and the galaxy would burn again. Blake looked at the Queen. Make the right choice, he said quietly. For them, he nodded toward her daughters, standing together, hand in hand. The Queen's jaw trembled, and then she closed her eyes. Stand down, she whispered. Her guards froze. Your Majesty? Stand down. The words echoed through the fleet like thunder. The war stopped in a heartbeat. In human command, Admiral Ruiz stared at his screen in disbelief. The Zorith. They're retreating. All across space, engines went silent. Guns lowered. The fire across the stars began to fade. On her ship, Queen Jara turned to Blake. You've done something no one else ever could, human. He nodded quietly. What's that? She looked at her daughters. You made me remember what mercy feels like. For a moment, even the stars seemed to pause. And somewhere, across millions of light years, humanity's name, once feared, once hated, began to mean something new. Not monsters. Not conquerors, but protectors. The war had stopped, but the galaxy did not feel at peace. The fire across the stars was gone, yet tension hung heavier than ever, like smoke that refused to fade. Every race watched. Every ship waited. Everyone wondered the same thing. Was this peace, or just the quiet before the next war? On board the Zorith flagship, Captain Aaron Blake sat in a metal chamber surrounded by alien guards. His armor was gone. His weapons taken. He was not a prisoner, but he was not free either. The door opened. Queen Jara entered, her silver armor gleaming faintly under the pale light. For the first time, her expression wasn't rage. It was unreadable, a storm held behind calm eyes. "You stopped my fleets," she said quietly. "You made me question everything I believed." Blake nodded slowly. "Then maybe there's hope." She studied him for a moment. "You risked your life for my children." "Why?" he hesitated. "Because—" "No one did that for mine." The Queen froze. The silence stretched. Then she turned away. "You could have run. You could have left them to die." "I'm human," Blake replied simply. "It's what we do. We protect." Elsewhere in the ship, the three princesses listened through the wall, their faces tight with worry. They knew something wasn't right. Jara's council had grown restless. Many of her generals hated the idea of peace. They wanted vengeance, and in the shadows, a plot was already forming. Commander Rethan, the Queen's most loyal warrior, stood before a group of officers. His voice was cold. "The Queen has lost her strength. She listens to the human filth. If she will not finish the war, then we will." He pressed a button, revealing a small hollow device, a miniature detonator. "Tonight," he whispered, "we remind the galaxy who rules it." The room fell silent. Then one by one, the officers nodded. Back in the Queen's chamber, Blake stood at the viewport, watching human ships drift among alien fleets, uneasy allies for the first time in history. He could almost hear the tension humming through space. He spoke quietly. "They don't trust each other. Not yet, maybe never. But if this peace fails, it won't just be war again. It'll be extinction." Jara turned to him. "You speak as if the humans will fight again." Blake's eyes were tired. "They will, and they'll win, but no one will be left to celebrate." The Queen looked at him, and for the first time, she understood the weight that humans carried. Pain, memory, hope, all at once. That night, the ship's corridors glowed dim blue. The Queen's daughters slept peacefully in the royal quarters. Blake was placed under guard, but something about the silence felt wrong. Then, a low vibration. A sound he knew too well, the hum of a charge building. Deep inside the ship, he froze. It wasn't an engine.
It was a bomb! Move!
Blake shouted to the guards running toward the main corridor. They raised their weapons in confusion, but he shoved past. "Bomb in the lower deck! Evacuate the royal wing!" The alarms blared seconds later, red lights flashing through every hall. Zorith soldiers shouted in panic. The Queen rushed into the corridor, her eyes wide. "What's happening?" "Your ship's been compromised," Blake yelled. He grabbed her arm. "Where are your daughters?" Her face went pale. "Their quarters." They ran. Down the hall, Commander Rethan's voice echoed over the intercom. "For the Empire." "For vengeance!" "The human dies tonight, and so does peace." Jara stopped in disbelief. "Rethan, he was my brother in arms." Blake didn't slow down. "He's gone too far." "We have seconds." They reached the royal quarters. The door was sealed by the blast locks. Inside, the girls were screaming. Blake aimed his shoulder cannon and fired. The door exploded open. He rushed in, grabbing Sira and Nira while Lyra clung to her mother. The sound of energy charges filled the hall, drones coming, armed and ready to kill. Blake shoved the princesses behind him. "Stay down!" He opened fire, sparks flying as plasma bolts lit the corridor. One after another the drones fell, but more kept coming. His rifle overheated. He tossed it aside and drew a sidearm. His armor was scorched, his body bleeding, but he didn't stop. Queen Jara watched in shock. This was the man her empire called monster. He was bleeding for her children, again. Finally, the last drone fell. Smoke filled the hall. Blake staggered, breathing hard. Then he looked at the bomb's timer glowing on the wall, 0:45. 0:44, 0:43. He turned to Jara. You have to go. Take them and get to the escape bay. What about you? She demanded. He smiled faintly. I'll buy you time. Jara shook her head. No, you'll die. He met her gaze. Someone has to make the choice. The Queen hesitated, and for the first time in her life, she didn't know what to do. But Lyra's voice broke the silence. Mother, please. Let him. Jara's heart broke. She wanted to command, to order, to save. But she knew that look in the human's eyes. The look of someone ready to trade everything for others. She grabbed his arm. When this is over, she said softly, the galaxy will remember your name. Blake chuckled weakly. Don't bother. Humans don't need statues, just peace. Then he turned and ran toward the reactor core. 30 seconds. He tore open the panel, hands shaking as sparks burned his skin. The bomb was alien, complex but not impossible. He could disarm it, or detonate it early to save the others. There wasn't time for both. His fingers hovered over the switch. He whispered to himself, for humanity, for them. He closed his eyes and pressed the button. The explosion lit the void like a newborn sun. The flagship's hull cracked, sending shockwaves across space. But the escape pod launched just in time, carrying the Queen and her daughters away from the fire. From the pod window, Queen Jara watched her flagship burn. Tears streamed down her face, silent, shining like silver glass. Her daughters held her hands tightly. Lyra whispered, he kept his promise. Jara nodded slowly. Yes, he did. Across the galaxy, every signal went silent. The war ended not with victory, but with one man's choice. And in that silence, the galaxy finally understood what made humanity truly dangerous. Not their weapons, not their rage, but their hearts. The explosion faded hours ago, but its light still danced across the stars. Where once the mighty Zorith flagship had stood, there was now only silence, a drifting cloud of metal and memory. The galaxy held its breath. No one spoke. No one fought. Even warships that had faced each other for decades now floated quietly, watching the place where one human had given everything. Inside the escape pod, Queen Jara sat motionless. Her daughters clung to her arms, their eyes red from crying. The hum of the engines was the only sound. Sira whispered, Is he coming back? The Queen's lips trembled. No, child. He's gone. Lyra turned toward the window. Through the smoke and fire, she could still see a faint trail of light fading into darkness, the last trace of Captain Aaron Blake. For a long time, no one spoke. And then, for the first time in Zorith history, the Queen bowed her head in silence. Not for an emperor, not for a general, but for a human. Days passed. The war stopped completely. No orders, no battles, no revenge, because every side, human, alien, neutral, had seen what happened. One man, once called a killer, had sacrificed himself not for victory, but for peace. It spread like a whisper through the systems. Miners told the story in bars. Pilots told it on comms. Children whispered it before sleep. The man who stopped a war. No propaganda. No politics. Just truth. In the ruins of the battlefield, a recovery team searched the debris. They found twisted metal, scorched armor, and one broken dog tag with faded letters. A. Blake. A single heartbeat was still recorded in the chip, the last data from his suit. The scientists who recovered it didn't speak. They simply stood there, helmets bowed, as if the stars themselves were listening. Weeks later, Queen Jara arrived on Earth. It was the first time in history a Zorith ruler set foot on human soil. No army, no guards, only her daughters and a small delegation. When her ship landed, thousands of humans gathered silently. No one cheered, no one protested. They simply watched, unsure if this was peace or apology. The Queen stepped out, her silver armor replaced with dark, ceremonial robes. She held out the recovered dog tag, polished clean, and placed it at the foot of a small stone monument in the center of the plaza. The monument read only 5 words. For those who protected others, she knelt. And every camera, every eye in the galaxy, witnessed something no one thought possible. A queen of the Zorith bowing to a human. That moment changed everything. The Galactic Council declared a new treaty, not of control but of respect. No species would be above another.
And carved at the top of the treaty, in both Zorith and English, were the same words: "Peace built on sacrifice cannot break." Years passed. The story of Captain Blake became legend.
Children in schools, human and alien alike, learned his name. Statues were built not of gold or marble, but from the metal of destroyed warships, melted and reshaped into his image, standing tall with his rifle at his side, head bowed in peace. And on the anniversary of the final explosion, the galaxy stopped fighting for one day every year, calling it the Day of the Human. But the story didn't end there. Queen Jara often visited Earth. Her daughters grew up learning human languages, studying human history, and telling others about the man who saved them. In time, Lyra became an ambassador, a bridge between two worlds. When asked why she worked so hard to protect humanity, she always gave the same answer: because one of them protected me first. Far beyond the colonies, deep in the silent void, a patrol ship once picked up a strange signal. A heartbeat, faint, distant, but unmistakably human. It vanished seconds later. No one knew if it was real, or just the stars remembering. But somewhere, in that endless darkness, one could almost hear a voice. Rough, calm, familiar. If they're safe. That's enough. And then the stars went quiet again. Back on Earth, under the twin moons of New Geneva Colony, the monument still stands. No gods, no flags, just a single flower, placed there every morning by someone no one ever sees. A child once asked her grandmother, "Why do humans fight so much?" The old woman smiled softly. "They fight because they care. They fight because they feel. But the real strength of humans isn't in how they fight." She looked up at the sky, eyes shining. "It's in how they choose to stop." And across the galaxy, that truth lived on, a legend written not in blood or victory, but in sacrifice and compassion. Because in the end, when the stars remember humanity, they will not speak of their wars or their weapons, but of one man, standing alone, who taught the universe the meaning of being human.